watch.
I don't see him.
The movie begins with a troubled man named Maddox, praying to God in his house. He throws his book of evil into the flames and falls asleep. Not long after, he wakes up possessed and retrieves his indestructible evil book from the fireplace. The possessed Maddox goes into a room and makes a circle with an iron bar, creating an evil portal into the floor. Afterward, the scene shifts to an unmarried couple named Chris and Alessa, making the most of the night. During the hot moments, Chris sees the devilish form of Alessa that fills him with terror. Chris quits the process and goes into the bathroom to refresh himself, believing it was his optical illusion. The following morning, Alessa visits a gynecologist who informs her that she is pregnant, leaving Alessa in utter shock. Alessa expresses amazement and asks the doctor to re-examine her, suggesting she might be mistaken. Dr. Sanders asserts the diagnosis and shows Alessa dried semen, confirming she is pregnant. Alessa then explained that she and her partner, Chris, had used a protective measure during their intimacy. Dr. Sanders then advises Alessa to check the trash at home to see if the condom is full of semen or not. Chris is talking to his mother on the phone when Alessa knocks on the door. Chris answers it, letting her in. The miffed Alessa tells him she is pregnant, leaving him speechless for a moment. Alessa goes to the washroom and finds a leaking condom in the trash, becoming furious with Chris at his knowing mistake.
Like you not give a shit about my body and you're just... Things happen faster for me, Chris.
He then gives her a box of contraceptive pills, asking her to abort the unborn baby. Alessa becomes even more furious at it, throwing the pill into the toilet in frustration. She comes outside and reveals to Chris that her mother died while giving birth to her. Her father, Maddox, had told her that if she ever became pregnant, she must come to him instead of going to the hospital. Alessa then forces Chris to take her to her father's home. Chris shows reluctance and begins booking an Uber. Meanwhile, Alessa sees obscene photos of other girls on Chris's phone, causing her to throw the phone in disgust. While drinking water in the bathroom, her unborn baby growls in her womb. Suddenly, a tentacle comes out of her womb and pulls her down to the floor. Upon hearing a loud thud, Chris rushes into the bathroom, discovering his girlfriend lying passed out on the floor. He brings her around and forces her to visit a hospital, but Alessa insists that he take her to her father's house. Chris stoops to her request, setting out for Maddox's house. On the way, Chris stops by a beer shop to pee. While washing her hands after taking a pee, Alessa's baby begins growling inside the womb after feeling hungry. Meanwhile, a lady enters the washroom, only to find a tentacle coming out of Alessa's womb. Soon, the fetus attacks the store attendant and feeds on her blood while Alessa is standing terrified nearby. After this horrific incident, Alessa comes out of the washroom, telling Chris that she encountered a snake in the washroom, which caused her to scream in fear. Then, she sets out for her father's house with Chris. On the way, she tells a few things about her father, Maddox, to Chris. She explains that her father doesn't really talk much until he eats, so she has to cook food as soon as they reach home. Moreover, he went blind from a mortal shell explosion during a war. Chris finds it weird, but he brushes it off. Moments later, they arrive at Maddox's. Hearing a noise outside, Maddox raises his shotgun toward the source, but Alessa calls out to reassure him, calming him down. She embraces her father and tells him she is happy to see him. Chris introduces himself to Maddox, but Maddox acts weirdly. Later in the scene, Chris tries to get along with Maddox, but Maddox doesn't seem to be interested in talking to him and stays silent, whereas Alessa starts cooking food in the kitchen for her father. Chris goes into the kitchen to help Alessa prepare the meal. When he tears open the packaging of raw meat, the fetus inside Alessa's womb stirs and grows hungry. Sensing what will happen next, Alessa rushes to the bathroom without delay. Sensing something is wrong, Maddox immediately enters the kitchen, notices the faint scent of blood on the floor, and realizes that Alessa is pregnant. Without saying a word to Chris, he leaves. Maddox comes into a room where there is a demonic portal in the floor, revealing that it was Maddox whom we saw at the beginning of the movie. Maddox whispers into the portal, telling someone that Alessa is pregnant.
I think she's pregnant.
Soon a demonic hand emerges from the portal, giving eyesight to Maddox. At the dinner table while eating the meal, Chris smells a rat, doubting that Maddox is faking to be blind when he asks Chris to open the blinds behind him. However, Chris does as Maddox asks. He then tries to uncover the truth, but his hand is caught in the process by Maddox, unknowingly clearing Chris's doubt. Alessa calms down the aggravating situation and tells her father that she came over there for a reason. She then asks him what led to her mother's death while giving birth to her. Maddox dodges the question, saying that a long period of time has passed by since that sorrowful incident, so he can't remember anything. He asks Chris and Alessa to settle in for the night at his house, and in the meantime, he will look for anything about his wife. Alessa agrees. Later, Alessa goes into one of the rooms hoping to find something like medical documents, paperwork that can answer her troubling questions about her mother's death. She desperately searches every box but fails to find anything inside. Alessa spots her father without his cane below and immediately rushes to his help. She asks him to wait until she goes and fetches his cane, leaving Chris to look after him. So Chris helps Maddox put his tools into the wheelbarrow. Meanwhile, Alessa returns with Maddox's cane, gently giving it to him. Maddox then sends Chris with Alessa to help her in the kitchen. He then throws away his can and wheels away the wheelbarrow. In the kitchen, Alessa feels drained and soon after she passes out, falling to the floor. Meanwhile, Maddox walks into the kitchen and takes off his black glasses, revealing he is no longer blind now. However, Chris already knew it, so he isn't that amazed. Chris tells Maddox that they need to take Alessa to a hospital, but Maddox opposes it, saying the hospital will kill her because it is not a normal fetus. This fetus needs to eat, and if we don't feed it, it will start sucking on Alessa's blood to survive. Hearing this, Chris grabs Maddox by the collar, considering him to be out of his mind. Maddox retaliates, punching Chris in the belly, decapacitating him. He then puts Alessa into the wheelbarrow and wheels away. Meanwhile, Chris arrives and rushes to save Alessa, but Maddox manages to overpower him. Not long after, a car stops by the road. A man gets out of his car to help Alessa, but he tragically falls victim to the starving fetus. Chris, shocked by what he sees, realizes that his unborn son is not truly human. Shortly after, Alessa regains consciousness, but Maddox uses anesthesia to put her back to sleep. He then asks Chris to bring the wheelbarrow, and Chris does as he says. Maddox puts the man's body into the car to dispose of it, and asks Chris to put Alessa in bed, assuring him the fetus doesn't attack kin. Shortly afterward, Alessa comes around and asks Chris if he saw everything. Chris replies yes. Just then, the devilish fetus begins troubling Alessa from inside. Chris devises a plan to get rid of the fetus. He tells Alessa that they will cut the cord as soon as the fetus comes out to attack other people. So we need to get near someone to execute our plan. Before Chris could execute his plan, Maddox arrives, scolding Chris for disobeying him as he had asked him to put Alessa in bed. Alessa is amazed upon finding her father not visually impaired and becomes furious. She forces Maddox to tell her what really happened to her mother. Maddox then reveals that her mother is still alive. He forcefully takes Alessa and locks her in a room and asks Chris to put on a shirt and follow him. Chris confronts Maddox, telling him that he knows he has made a deal with the demon to get his eyesight back in exchange for a baby. Shortly, Maddox sneaks around his neighbor's house and explains his cruel plan to Chris, asking him to hit his neighbor with an iron bar as soon as he comes out. After that, Maddox goes to ring the doorbell to trap and make his neighbor the fetus's next meal. Maddox knocks on the door and hides. Soon a lady answers the door, but Maddox's plan turns into a comedy when Chris refuses to hit the woman. Not long after, a man comes and starts pummeling Chris. Meanwhile, the lady fetches her shotgun and rushes outside only to be knocked out by Chris. Chris snatches the shotgun from the lady and points it at Maddox, resolving to kill him, but the very next moment, the wily Maddox snatches the gun from him and knocks him out. Inside the house, Alessa is in chains. Soon Maddox enters the room carrying the fainted male neighbor. Smelling the blood from inside the womb, the fetus comes out screaming and feeds on the neighbor, sucking his blood. Alessa steps on the cord and tortures the fetus. She forces Maddox to tell her what he did to Chris, or she will snap the cord. Forced, Maddox comes into another room, where he has kept Chris with his hands tied backwards. After this, Maddox tells Alessa a story about her mother. He says that he created a portal into the floor after being possessed by an evil book. When he looked into the hole, he found a female demon named Cerise below, and she possessed him, showing him hallucination about a beautiful woman. Under her spell, the hallucinating Maddox approaches Cerise and starts an intimate encounter with her, but in reality, he was making love to the demonic lady called Cerise. Over time, Maddox brought corpse after corpse to Cerise so she could feed on them. One day, Cerise gave birth to a baby girl who was no other than Alessa, the daughter of a demon. At first, Maddox thought of killing Alessa, but was moved by pity after hearing her cry. So he escaped with the baby, betraying Cerise. But soon after, he was caught by her and got blinded as punishment. The timeline gets back to the present, showing Maddox telling Alessa that he struggled his whole life to protect her. Alessa pulls apart after realizing that she is a half-human and half-demon. Cerise calls Maddox and asks him to hand Chris to her, as she now wants to produce another baby with him. Maddox begins strangulating Chris, but Chris manages to save himself when he stabs Maddox with a knife, killing him instantly. After this, Chris brings the kidnapped lady into the portal room, using her as bait to lure the fetus, and he is ready to kill it. But the fetus doesn't show up. Meanwhile, the woman hits Chris and flees. In the meantime, Cerise brings Maddox back to life and orders him to bring her Alessa. The enslaved Maddox unchains Alessa, telling her he will make her meet her mother. Cerise takes over Alessa's body and attacks Chris outside in the forest. She knocks him down and sits over his body. She then tells him she is Cerise, Alessa's mother, and she wants him to serve her. After this, Cerise begins throttling Chris, but in the meantime, Alessa's son comes out of Alessa's womb and attacks Cerise, striving to save his father from his maternal grandmother. After a long confrontation with her grandson, Cerise leaves Alessa's body. Alessa reveals to Chris that it was their son who saved him from Cerise. So she now wants to keep the baby instead of killing it. Inside the house, Cerise lures Maddox to the portal and rips off one of his arms, punishing him for not getting the job properly. Later, Maddox comes outside holding his shotgun, telling Alessa that he and Cerise need her and saying that he shoots Chris in the leg. Enraged by this, Alessa picks up the gun and pulls it at Maddox. For fear of getting killed, Maddox promises her he will get Chris healed once she sacrifices her fetus. Alessa reluctantly agrees and goes with Maddox. Cerise offers Maddox's severed arm to lure the fetus. Soon, the fetus comes out and begins feeding on the arm, and after drinking blood to his heart's content, the fetus returns to Alessa's womb. Moments later, Alessa is in labor, and the selfish Maddox helps her give birth to her son so that he can hand over the baby to his devil wife, Cerise. In a while, the baby comes into this world and is about to be handed over to Cerise by Maddox, but just then Chris arrives and stops Maddox, urging him to let him serve Cerise. Alessa stops him from doing so, but Chris reveals that Cerise promised to heal him if he serves her. So Maddox hands the baby over to Chris, who gives the baby back to Alessa. He then crawls to the portal, as Cerise wants him now. Maddox spots a knife in Chris's pocket and immediately takes it out, disarming him. Before long, Maddox amputates Cerise's hand, saving Chris in time. To save Alessa and Chris from his evil wife, Maddox sacrifices himself by leaping into the portal. Soon Cerise crawls out of the portal. Alessa, being half demon and half human, transforms into her demon form and urges Chris to take their son and escape. Soon a brutal battle erupts between mother and daughter. Despite her strength, Alessa is no match for the mighty Cerise and is quickly defeated. After subduing Alessa, Cerise begins searching for Chris, desiring to be impregnated by him for another child. Chris, however, hides behind a chest. At that moment, 2 police officers arrive at the house, responding to a neighbor's call. Cerise viciously kills them by tearing off their heads and drinking their blood. Seizing the distraction, Chris Chris rushes to save Alessa. Cerise soon storms into the room, takes Alessa hostage, and threatens to kill her unless Chris throws their son into the portal. Desperate to save Alessa, Chris obeys and casts the baby into the portal. When Cerise looks inside, she is confused to see no baby below. Meanwhile, Alessa seizes the opportunity to wrap a chain around Cerise's neck, choking her, as Chris chants a spell from Maddox's ancient book. The portal begins to close, trapping Cerise's head within it. The next morning, Chris and Alessa bury Cerise's remaining body deep in the forest before leaving with their child, unaware that Cerise may one day return.